Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this show is Let's Live with Thurman Greco, and it's coming to you from scenic downtown Woodstock, New York, Educational Channel 23, and also from YouTube, Let's Live with Thurman Greco. And we have two guests this evening who, while personally may not be regulars on the show, the Socrates Animal Shelter is definitely regular on Let's Live with Thurman Greco, and we hope to have more and more. We hope to have the Socrates Animal Shelter visiting on this show at least every month or so in the coming months, because Ellen and I are learning that the Socrates Animal Shelter is mystical and magical and cannot be lived without. And so we've got two guests this evening. Can you start off by telling us your name?
Okay, yes, I'm Adele Post-Sinderman, and I'm the administrator of our not-for-profit Socrates Animal Welfare Fund. And 5 years ago, the shelter director, Ellie Moffett, and myself decided to form a not-for-profit and to make sure that every single donation, every dollar went to the animals and for whatever they needed to help the animals at the shelter. And it's worked very well. And with our not-for-profit, with grants and with donations, we have raised about $2.1 million towards our new animal shelter. It started as a $1.5 million project, but with COVID and rising cost, and as we went along, finding that, well, we should have this for the animals and that to make it a state-of-the-art facility, it's pretty much close to $3 million now. But we have persevered, and all the funding will come from grants and donations, not from tax dollars. So we're very proud of that, and we're working hard on it. And the small shelter staff are just fantastic people for me to work with, and Ellie and I have become very close. My mother, Marie Post, had founded the Socrates Animal Shelter 45 years ago, and she knew Ellie Moffett, and before my mom passed away in 2015, she asked Ellie if she would be the shelter manager. So that's how it all came about. It was all just one big circle meant to be that Ellie and I would carry on my mother's mission.
That's wonderful. And we have another guest this evening.
Yep. I'm Eric Rudolante, and I'm one of the volunteers at the shelter for almost about 2 years now.
You've been there 2 years. How did you find the Socrates Animal Shelter?
It was during the height of COVID, and I was following them on Facebook, and I loved following the different stories throughout. And then one day there was a post that they had feral kittens, and they needed people to read to them. And I was just coming out of a 10-year-long chronic illness and just starting to kind of get back on my feet. So I figured that was a good way in the middle of COVID to be able to give back, to do something. So I first started going in and would read children's books to the different feral kittens, and then different cats would come in that needed socializing, and then from there just whatever they could use my help with.
You know, I think that's a wonderful thing, because I believe that and I truly believe this, because I have one of your animals, and I also have a history of, I did fostering for 10 years ago, but I did it, so I know whereof I speak. Mm-hmm. I really feel like the animals that come from Socrates Animal Shelter are indeed magical. I have a story. We all have stories, and they are all personal, and they all touch our hearts. And you cannot get that at a run-of-the-mill place. You have to get your heart attraction in a very, very special place. And I understand you're growing. The Socrates Animal, yeah.
We have in the last few years, and actually during COVID, we actually adopted out twice as many, more than 2.5 times that we used to, because during that time there were situations that we needed to address. And that would be rescues that needed to be brought up from Louisiana, whether it was the hurricane or the storms, and also taking in animals from people that got ill from COVID. And we made an agreement with New York City to help them also, because New York City was one of the ones that was hit hardest in this area. So we would take in animals from people that were ill with COVID, and if they got better, they would retrieve their pet, and if not, then we rehome them. We have permission to rehome them. From Louisiana, normally what happens there, if they have a storm approaching, they empty out the shelters from the animals, bring them up to the northeast, and then the shelters are open for the animals that get misplaced during storms. So, and we work with just one rescue down there because we're assured that the animals have been vetted, they have their inoculations. If they're age appropriate, they get spay or neutered before they come up, they get checked for heartworms. So, and a vet checks them again once they get onto the transport, the van that brings them up. So we know that they pretty much can get adopted out the following day because we know that they are perfectly healthy. And when it comes to adoptions with the cats, now dogs have laws, state laws, cats do not. That would be one thing I would really like to see pass in New York. So that's one thing my mother did years ago. She said to the town at the time, and she was a council person at the time, if I raise the money to take care of the cats in the shelter, can I have cats there? They agreed to it. So that's where donations came that were needed. So, and cats are one of our biggest, I don't want to say problems because they're not. When they come in, they're not a problem.
One thing I was going to touch on was just what you were saying before, how you fostered. I mean, you were saying the influx of cats.
So important.
One thing that I've really been amazed by is, it can be like 10 o'clock a.m. a message goes out to, to volunteers or foster families. Someone could say, okay, I'll be there at noon. And so however many weeks it is that those foster cats are with that family, that space is opened up in the shelter for cats who are available in the moment.
Right.
So that's why, fostering is so important. When you mentioned
and we don't have little 4-day-old ones at the shelter. The fosters keep them till they're 8 weeks old, totally healthy, and at 8 weeks old, then they are weaned and they can go, and then they can be adopted. And most of the time, by that time, there's a long list of people that have applications in, and they're very, I don't want to say strict, being unkind, but you have to be sure that the person who's adopting them knows what they're getting into. Like you were just talking about before. Adoption isn't just, let me go to the shelter and get a dog today or get a cat. You have to know in your heart that you're ready to accept another animal into your home. And if you've never been a cat person before, you have to learn about it before you adopt. You can't just go and adopt a cat and go home and go, I didn't know they were going to tear my curtains. I didn't know, they need a litter box. I didn't know that. Just things like that. Education.
What are some things that a person needs to know before they take home a cat?
Well, I think one of the important things, in addition to what you need to know, and one of the nice things that I found with the shelter is they are able to give you the resources. Like before I adopted my kitten, they were telling me different YouTube channels to check out for like introducing a new cat into the house, that kind of a thing. So I guess it depends on what experience you've had beforehand.
So you brought home a cat.
Yes.
And how did you introduce your cat to your home?
Well, it was actually when I was still a volunteer at the time. This was a kitten who was in a group that were found with like maggots had laid eggs like in their eyes and stuff.
Yeah, seriously and medically disabled.
So a couple of volunteers, one of the staff and a volunteer late at night were taking care, getting all of that out. One of the kittens, her eye didn't get better. It just kept getting huge and then bursting. And then it had to be removed. And so she, of course, is the one I fell in love with because I was taking her to vet appointments. So a couple different times before I adopted her, I brought her home as a kitten and kind of got a little lay of the land and how she was going to be with the other 2 cats. But she doesn't get along with one of the cats I had before. So that's one of the things that you kind of have to know the lay of your house before you're planning to adopt also.
Well, when you're going to bring home, so you brought home this kitten to a family, to a household that had a cat.
Yeah.
So how did you introduce that cat into your home?
It was very slow and day by day. And I mean, she had been there a few times before. And I mean, she was only probably 8 weeks old, I think, when I adopted her. And, you know, she had just had stitches out from her one eye. So at the time I had a playpen, like a cat playpen, and I would put it in the hallway at night. And she would go there and sleep. And, you know, she couldn't get out. The other cats couldn't attack her, but they could smell her. They got used to her scent.
Your other cat that was there came up to the pen, the
Yep.
playpen,
Yep,
and smelled her and say, oh, okay, something's going on here.
Yeah, and so like we started off slow like that because she was so small in the beginning also, and because she only has one eye, she doesn't always see the other cats coming from the other side. So I had 2 older cats. One she gets along with great, the other not so great. But it was just kind of trial and error, you know, going from the playpen as she got bigger, kind of realizing, okay, her one bigger sister does not like her so much. You know, so they go in different places during the day, and everybody's happy.
So you just separate, they have different territories.
Yep.
Are your cats indoor, outdoor?
Indoor.
They are indoor.
Yep.
And do you recommend that the cats be indoor or indoor, outdoor? How does the Saugerties Animal Shelter feel about that?
Indoor is always best, but there's always some situations where you kind of don't have a choice, or some cats, and also depending where you live. There are some cats that have come in that have been barn cats. They were not the type that were ever going to come in and be, you know, a house cat, but we wanted to do something to give them their best life. I remember one of them, I forgot his name, was a big black cat, but he became best friends with a goat in someone's barn up in Lanesville. But you know, so he got to still go and live his best life. So always indoors is the safest and the best option.
Right.
But you know, there are situations where you find feral cats and things like that.
Yeah, it depends on the age that you find a feral cat. If they are like your kitten was found,
Right.
if they're under 8 weeks old, you can socialize them, which is the important factor of our fostering program. We have such a fantastic fostering system with people that are just, well, I guess that's the great part about being part of the Saugerties Animal Shelter is that we just respect each other so much, and there's a lot of the kind hearts. And so if they're young enough, they can be socialized, and our fosters do that, and then they come to the shelter and get adopted. If they're an older feral cat, they don't want to be socialized. So like Eric said, we take them in, we have them checked by a vet, give them shots that are necessary to live outdoors, and test them to make sure they don't have feline leukemia. And then they get returned to where they were, and their ears get clipped, so you always know a feral cat that they've been neutered. But more than likely, we try to find homes with barns that they do live outdoors, but they're in a barn and they're taken care of daily by the humans.
One of the barn cats that went with the one in Lanesville that became best friends
with a goat. That's such a great story.
Like a week later, it's one of my mom's close friends and her husband. They said, we haven't seen the cat for a few days. The food's not there, but we haven't seen the cat. It was kind of staying underneath the house. So later on, he went to visit his son, who lived a few miles down the road. He goes in the house, and this cat is laying in front of the wood stove. So it took him just like a week going from being a barn cat to picking a home
this is
and going
pretty good.
right, and going inside to a stranger's home.
Yeah.
So they thought the cat had gone missing. No, it just went and found a home. So sometimes it works out great. You know, every cat's so different, and I think socialization is a big key. Even some of the feral cats that I would read to, over like a 4-week period, it would be amazing how different they would be when I would go in. And then you would see, you know, a week or two later, they had been adopted by a family. So socialization really is
So
key.
that's how you started with our shelter, is that you would come in. I think that's how I met you
Yeah.
one day there. You would come in and read Now, someone would say, is a cat going to lay there? And they do listen because they hear your voice. It's just like being a parent when you read to a child. It's a calm voice, you're reading to them, and it calms and socializes the cat to get used to the human being.
And after a few visits, they would go from the back of the cage to coming in the front. And remember Di, who came from,
Yes.
we had a love-hate relationship. I would get 5 seconds of love, and then she would like swat at me. But when I would go in, she would just purr and purr and purr, and sometimes we'd open the gate, and she would just walk around the room while I was reading to whoever was in the back room. But, I mean, it was just such a change. You remember how she was when she first came? And then she ended up being adopted and finding a home.
I think it was my husband and I that went to go pick them up.
Yeah,
This is
that's right.
Diana's cat shelter down in Eckford that closed a few years ago after Diana Banks passed away. And we made that agreement that there were 2 cats that they used to let run around. And what happened is the board of directors, they went around the Hudson Valley looking at a shelter that they felt, when you're a not-for-profit and you are closing your not-for-profit, you have to transfer whatever funds you have into another 501c3, which is the Sororities Animal Welfare Fund. So we became the recipient of that, but I agreed to take the 2 cats. And so Diana, she did get adopted.
And Frankie's there.
The other one, Frankie, well, what we did is we built a catio for him. So he has a huge condo, and then in nice weather, he can go outside in the screened-in catio. And when we have our new shelter, he'll have the same situation, because he's not going to get adopted. He's cranky.
Yeah.
You know,
and
you're
what-
talking here about your ongoing plans. What are your ongoing plans? For as long as I can remember, the Socrates Animal Shelter was at the Dome.
Well, that's the shelter, that's the garage that 45 years ago my mother was given when she said to the town, and if you remember years ago when I was little, when you found a stray dog, they went to the a town building department and were just put in a shed till they found the owner, and then if not, then somebody adopted the dog. So she wanted to have an animal shelter, and hence they gave her an old garage. She had it done over into a shelter, and it's definitely time that we have to have a new shelter. So we've been working on that project for 4 years, and just last month we I paid a tree service, Bart Hill Tree Service, owned by Joey Gambino now. He is a man of his word. He told me, in fact, I was out of the country and called him, and he said he would start the following week, which was January 23rd, and it would take him 2 weeks. Done. So 1.5 acres of land on the same property that the existing shelter is. The land is now cleared, the well is in, we're about to have a septic put in, and then it will go out, because even though the shelter's run by our not-for-profit, it's a town shelter. But the good thing about that is the town gave us 5 acres to put it on. And we have a wonderful architect, Laura Kazar, and we are going to have a 10,000 square foot shelter. And we just had 1.5 acres cleared. And the bidding will go out in May for a contractor. Because it's a town shelter, it has to legally go through the official public bidding.
As a shelter, you have 10,000 feet. So what kind and how many animals are going to go in this shelter?
Well, I think Eric's probably going to have his own office by that time, right?
I'm hoping.
So
I think one of the nice things will be, like right now, there's, like for the feral cats, there's not a lot of room. So there was one room that I could go into to sit and read to them. But then let's say someone was coming in to adopt and wanted to spend time with different cats to see which one. So then they might need that room also. So there's just not a lot of extra room to do those things to help. So I think one of the biggest things will be just the space to be able to
do that.
to do the adoptions
Your
properly.
activities room. You'll
Yeah,
have an activities
and
room.
also slash a meet and greet, like there'll be
Right.
one separately for the dogs, one for the cats. As you first walk in, we'll have a cat catio. So in the nice weather, selected cats for that day can go outside and be in that screened in air. Then there'll be a community room for the cats. Then there's going to be a room called the cat tree room. So we're not sure how we're going to build it yet, but this room will have a climbing tree or steps going up. That'll be 2 floors. And we'll have a bench in there too, because with part of our naming opportunity, we have benches, and each person will get a plaque on them. So there'll be a bench in there so you can sit and read to the community cats. In fact, by that time, the cats, they'll probably be reading to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you've been talking a lot about cats. What other kinds of animals would you be adopting now?
Puppies, puppies, puppies. And the Northeast is very educated on spay and neutering, but that's one of the things about the South, not so much. And I'm not talking about the people that do the sheltering and the rescuing. They try so hard, but the governments down there aren't on board like our government is here. So we bring up a lot of puppies from there. So puppies and dogs, and we'll have 16 dog kennels and 5 featured dog kennels. Those 5 will be bigger for dogs that are anxious, or a pregnant mom, or mom with puppies. So they'll have a bigger space, and that area will be a little bit quieter. And but everything is going to be in this new shelter, so soundproof. It's great. So you walk in, and then also we're going to have a wildlife room. Ellie Moffitt, our shelter director, she is a wildlife rehabber. So that room is very important for her, and we'll have a turtle pond for rescued turtles that have been hit on the road, because Ellie is excellent at that. And squirrels. As much as we don't want our squirrels in the attic, Ellie, we have gone to meetings up in Albany, and we'll have this. I remember one time Fred Costello, the town supervisor, came with us to a meeting up in Albany, and he says to Ellie, "What's in that box in the back?" And we had it plugged into my Jeep. It was little baby squirrels. So even going to a meeting up in Albany, we take squirrels with us if they
That's
were
funny,
found.
'cause one of the first times I was volunteering, I was in the room reading, and all of a sudden I saw Ellie and Shallon's head bobbing outside of the window, and it was summer, so the window was open, and I looked up, and Shallon said, "Don't worry, we're just catching a baby squirrel." And that's what it was. A baby squirrel was
So you do some wild animal rehabilitation
Yes.
there as well.
Yeah, but as far as what we have right now is for adoptions, it's been cats, dogs, the puppies, and the kittens. There are some guinea pigs, I believe, that are in right now, and there have been rabbits. Also. So
yeah.
those are the main things.
What about snakes, serpents?
Well, you know what? I have never seen one there, but if that was a need.
That was my limit. I said that was my
No, they told me you were taking them home.
No. Right now, I think that would, like she said, the plans for like the different spaces in the new shelter, but space-wise, I mean, I don't know what they would do if someone brought
Well,
a snake,
in that situation, we have a list of other wildlife rehabbers. Like there's a specialist for birds. I know there's one in Port Ewan that I have many times, bird in trouble, and I'll take it over to that person. So that's her specialty. So there's another wildlife rehabber whose specialty is hawks, specialty is snakes. So we would call that specific person and take those there.
It's very community.
What about tame birds?
We get those yeah.
I would say just today, I was looking for a parakeet that I think.
Looking for a home for one?
No, looking to adopt one.
Oh, okay.
And so I guess there was one that someone had at their home that had been at the shelter, so they brought it to their house, and so they were going to pick it up next week. So
Well, that happened to me 45 years ago. My mother, she called for myself and my sister Jean. Somebody had passed away. They had cockatiels and they had parakeets. My sister Jean took the parakeets, I took the cockatiels. That was, almost 50 years ago. And I still, not the same ones, but when one would pass away, then, I'd have to get another one, so I'd have 2. So 50 years later, I still have 2 cockatiels.
So really, there's.
We do get them, and that's what happens. We find homes.
Any type of animal, and if it's not something that immediately can be done, like Adele said, there's so many other organizations and resources. I mean, I remember one time there was a cat that needed a ride to Schenectady, and it was a transfer. there was some place up there that could take better care of this particular cat. And in return, we took one of theirs that we could adopt out. But I just happened to be going up that day. So that's what I mean. The organizations work together. So if one, has something special that comes along, there's people to call or, to kind of work their way through and figure out.
But that's
a
just it with
solution.
you, Eric, that thank God you are so great. You could call you right away, 6 o'clock in the morning, and he would be there to take an animal. But we all chip in doing that. Ellie and I we took a dog that, she's actually the shelter mascot now, Cherish.
She was here the last time.
Oh, okay.
She came with us.
And we took her to Tufts University in Boston to have heart surgery. They're a veterinary school. Absolutely amazing. Each building takes care of a certain, like this was the cardiologist, and then there was one for oncology. While I was there, and at the time with COVID, we had to wait outside with our mask on, and they took Cherish inside for a consultation. Then she went back and had her life-saving surgery. But then I also saw somebody with a horse going in with, it was like just amazing, and they're very kind there at Tufts University. And about 6 months ago, Ellie and I took a dog that was being fostered to a specialist to have an orthopedic surgery done. And that's another thing we do. We make sure everybody gets the care, the medical care they need. If they need to have a heart surgery, if they need to have a hip replacement.
An eye removed.
One dog needed to have her leg amputated, and it turns out the vet who did the amputation adopted her. This was down at Marbletown Animal Hospital.
And there was one cat. His name was Baltic. It was, a kitten. He was one of the ones when I was reading to ferals, and they asked me to take him to the vet because it said his leg was going to need to be amputated. But because when we had been there, we'd been playing some, and he had been more active and doing stuff. When he went back, they said, we don't think he needs to be amputated. He just needs physical therapy. So I would go in and I would take him into the bathroom and close the door and just make him run around the bathroom. And then he was adopted a few weeks later. But they saved his leg because, the help of the vet, of course, also, was a huge help. But they give that extra care. If the vet says this cat can keep its leg, it just needs some physical therapy, well, they're going to be able to find someone hopefully to help out and do that. And that's the extra level of care, I think, that the shelter goes to.
Well, that's that Big Hearts. Yep. We have a staff with Big Hearts. We have volunteers with Big Hearts, and I feel very fortunate.
The community.
And the community, absolutely.
Being very donation based for everything. If one of the animals has a serious problem and needs a surgery, quite often the community comes together and donates money to help cover the vet bill or go towards it, through the animal welfare fund.
And we don't know that that's going to happen. That dog that went up for the hip surgery up north, we knew what the vet bill was going to be, and we paid it. But the Northeast linesman, which I didn't even know existed in Saugerties, the linesman school stepped up and said they would pay the vet bill. And that is just amazing, because then that money we were going to spend there, then that can go for another medical needs. And we do one thing good about the shelter too now than what was before 5 years ago, is that they have a lot of medications on hand, a lot of vaccines, so the animals can get taken care of before they go to the vet to get checked out.
Well, now that you've been talking about all these things, one thing that we have not talked about is, where does the money come from? Are there how do you get the money?
Okay, so we have our fundraisers. We started last year with the Blue Jeans Ball, and now that's an annual event in the spring. Fortune Valley Manor in Saugerties, New York has been kind enough to give us their venue, and they will continue to do so. So that's always happening in May, and that does bring in, that money goes towards the new building. As far as the donations that come in every day go towards the medical care of the animals, And when we do have a medical need, we put it on our site, on the Sororities Animal site, on Facebook, and people step up with donations to help towards that.
There's a
And
donation.
what about, you have a shop, you have a boutique?
I was going to say that I'm
Right.
wearing one of
There
the
you
shirts. So at different events, like every year at the Garlic Festival, there's a tent that's there. And so they sell everything from magnets, for your car, to sweatshirts for your dog, to, human shirts. And in the boutique itself, it's a lot of very like high-end nice stuff that people
Really?
have donated.
Yeah.
It is, it's a lovely place. And
Yeah.
I know that I got a cat tower, and I've gotten several important things,
Yeah.
for my cat.
You can look, like last year I was joking I needed size 13 cowboy boots, and they were like, we have a pair.
Okay.
I was like, oh my, but literally,
course they did.
But listen, at Christmas time, it's all decked out, full and beautiful Christmas decorations, not just cat, dog, animal things or
And
shelter
some
clothes.
things are, like people have donated that are slightly used, but we have mostly a lot of new items. We have people that are artists in the local area that donate their jewelry, they donate handmade soaps, mugs, so it's really a great, we used to have.
Everybody wants to give, everybody wants to participate. So how can we participate in the Blue Jeans Ball?
Okay, so this year it's going to be May 13th on a Saturday. We will be sending out invitations to the list of people that we have in our software, but you can call the shelter, and the shelter number is 845-679-0339, and they will sell you a ticket.
Okay, now, since this is an annual thing, a person can call throughout the year.
Yes, and find out about
get
it.
a ticket to the Blue Jeans Ball.
Yes.
And I was going to say also, if you follow, whether on Facebook or any of the social media, that they're very good at keeping that up to date.
Well, let's talk about Facebook now. If somebody isn't really tuned in to the Sororities Animal Shelter, how are they going to find Facebook?
Well, we have our site, and
Yeah,
if they're
yeah.
not onto Facebook,
I was going to say, it's
No, but
not-
if you're on, but
If
if you
you're on,
haven't found it,
you
what
can
do
just-
you do?
Saugerties Animal Shelter.
And there it is.
There it is.
Yeah, that's what, it's the name
And
of it.
anybody can follow.
Yep,
And
it's
you
a
can
public.
find out what's going on.
Yeah.
and Shallon's very good at posting
Yep.
pictures of the store as well.
Yeah,
In fact-
they will update pictures with the boutique and hours and things like that.
Yeah, I'm one of the best customers. I texted her yesterday and I said, okay, I want those 3 little elephants that are in there, and I'll take that jewelry box for my granddaughter. Somebody donated American Girl dolls that were in mint condition, so I bought them for my 4-year-old granddaughter. So and also now we're have an eBay account, so some of the things are being
Oh,
sold on
let's
eBay.
talk about eBay. Can we talk about I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
One of our
Tell
vol-
me about eBay.
One of our volunteers at the boutique has just been a huge help.
Susan, there's again that big heart.
Yep. And so what she has done is she is taking different items that have been donated and posting them on eBay. And then those are also being shared on the website and Facebook and things like that. But so there is an eBay store set up just for the Saugerties Animal Welfare Fund, and it's items that have been donated, and this volunteer Susan is helping to post the pictures and post the sales and things like that.
Yeah.
Some
Oh, I
really
think that's
amazing
wonderful.
things. Yep.
Because when a person comes in for an animal, you need it. I mean, it takes a lot of money to get that pet ready.
Well, there's the cost of, and that's just it, like somebody might say, that's how much it costs to adopt, but knowing what other people have paid for rescues, it's not.
Yeah. You were saying before in the beginning how the animals are magical there. I just want to go back to that and say I really believe a large part of that is because of the staff and the group of volunteers
And the
there.
volunteers.
Because one of the things when I first started, I remember it used to be hard going home knowing that the kittens might not be there the next time. And I remember that there was a cat whose owner had passed away. And I went in one day, and all the kittens that I were used to had been adopted. And it was just this one sad cat whose owner had passed away. And I really felt like she and I kind of grieved together while I was in there for my reading time. But what is so amazing is that it just gives so much love that, like, after, I don't know, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, this cat who was so sad suddenly perked up and was so full of life, and then found someone who was just perfect to adopt her.
So that cat was going through the grieving
Right.
process just like we do.
Right.
She lost her
Oh,
longtime owner.
I can attest to that. When I was in my 50s, I lived in the DC metro area, and I worked with animals a lot, and I ran across, and I believe the worst thing that can happen to a domestic pet is to have the owner die. That is absolutely, because there's no one who wants it. And you can say, oh, what's an awful family, but there's always a valid reason for why the family cannot take the pet, obviously. Because if there were a reason why they could take the pet, they would take the pet. So here you have an animal who has been abandoned. And I would take these pets to my home, and I would keep them until they themselves either passed away or until I could find a home for them. That is the most...
It's devastating.
Oh.
And I think what's really key too is that the day that cat Fluffy came in, she would not have been giving off an energy to any families that were coming into adopt.
She didn't have it to give.
Right, because she needed time to mourn.
Right.
And I think that's why, especially, donations for the new shelter and having the space in the new shelter is also important, because it'll give more than just one extra room to be able to give that specialized care. And, it may take a month or two for a cat to bounce back from an
Absolutely.
event. But I remember a lot of my friends all kind of said in the beginning when I volunteered that they couldn't do it, it would be too hard. And I remember telling Ellie this once that, I kind of said to them, yeah, it's not easy, but for that moment in that cat or dog's life that they're in the shelter, they are living their best life in a worst situation.
Absolutely.
And they are given so much love and so much care.
And what happens with our cats, and especially in dogs, a lot of them where the owners have died, they're older cats or dogs. But it's just like the military. No man is left behind. They all get homes. 12 years old, they get adopted. And if it takes a little bit longer,
Yep.
so be it. And they just get a lot of love while they're there. And I think it's so important. And I myself, I have 2 dogs and now 1 cat. Unfortunately, I lost 2 in the past year. But I have talked to my children to say, you will take our pets, right? Because it's just like preparing your will, although most of the time, except in special cases, animals aren't put in wills. Make sure that somebody's going to take your pet. Whether you're my age, your age, know that somebody will take your pets, because that would not eliminate completely, but would help with the crisis of shelters.
One of the things that when I adopted my kitten, a year and a half ago, part of the application process, one of the questions on there is something about making sure that you have plans in place in case in case you're not able to take care of that animal. So that's another important thing that the shelter does, is really the adoption process. You don't just go in and just pick an animal. You have to get to know them, but you have to get approved first. There's an application that you do online.
References, you have to have a vet that we can call the vet.
And one of those questions is to say, if something would happen so you're not able to care for the pet, do you have plans in place? So I thought that was really important, because I had to say, yeah, I do.
And also, if something fails with that, bring that pet back to our shelter. We don't want to know a few years down the line that that pet is not in a good place. Bring it back to us. We will readopt.
That's a very important thing. I know that at one point we were, my husband and I, well, my husband was without a pet. And one day, several months ago, he was just very upset. He wanted a pet, and it was on a day when the shelter was not even open. It was on a Wednesday. And I thought, well, what are we going to do? So we got in the car, we drove over there, banged on the door, went in, and I just said to them, I said, we've got to have a pet. And I have stellar references. And so he sat down in a chair, and there was a cat in a cage, and she reached her little paw. And of course, you know, by then, and as it turned out, it was the only cat in the whole room that was ready to go. So Peaches went home with us.
There's the magic you're talking about.
That is the
That's
magic.
the magic.
That is the magic. And now my daughter went through a tremendous health challenge, and we had to go to another town to take care of her for a while. And there was never a question. Peaches went into the crate, she went with us up the road, and there was no, they say you can't, adapt. Cats don't forget it. She was there in 10 seconds. She was part of the team. She understood. And Ellen has a cat who takes her for a walk. These are things that if you don't have a pet, you're missing out. You are missing out.
No, and the cat that Ellen has, I remember in the very beginning, there was question as to whether or not she was going to be able to live any longer because she was older and had some health issues. But that's that extra care.
Yes.
They made sure, okay, well, there's a lot of life left in her. Let's do what we can.
But you know
and
what?
here we go, and then Ellen ended
But
up
the
adopting
animals
her.
give you
Yep.
that help you through your health issues.
Well, Ellen's cat, Mabel made the decision,
Yes.
to be a part of that team.
Yes.
Yep.
And if she didn't, she wouldn't be taking Ellen on walks. I
Yep.
mean, this is a decision which the cat makes. So when we think about adopting and providing health for and food and care, we have to realize that we do our part, but the animal does its.
It's adopting a family member. It's adopting a child. You bring them into your, it's like, it's like adopting a human. You bring them into your home, you give them love, they give it back. We had Ronnie adopted a kitten a year ago. She never had cats. She wasn't a cat person. All of a sudden, she adopted, she wanted a tuxedo. And I said, I'll find you a tuxedo. So I called Ellie. One of the foster homes had a black kitten with a little white hair. And what a love story this is. Her cat's name is Maui, Ronnie and Maui. It should be a children's book. She takes her in a cat carrier that adjusts with a seatbelt. For rides with her, she goes on hikes with her in a cat backpack. She'll go to when she can eat outside, say at Bread Alone in Rhinebeck, when you can eat outside. Her cat is in the carrier. She opens up the zipper a little bit because the cat's on a harness inside there, and she puts out a bowl for the cat to eat while Ronnie's drinking her cappuccino. So it's how you relate to the animals. It's how you relate. Now this cat gives her so much love back. And I'm fortunate enough that, I get sent pictures all the time, and it's just, I enjoy it. We enjoy so much seeing all our graduates from the shelter. I myself adopted a dog that came in. Somebody brought it in, said it was a stray, but we think it was the owner. And I was out of the country at the time, and I called him Teddy 5 years ago. I see his face, and I called Ellie. I said, I just knew. I said, don't adopt him out, but he was on hold just in case an owner reclaimed him. And as soon as the day after we got home, he's now part of our household. Now, for a year, he wasn't treated very well, so it took me a year for him to be sure that this is love and it's okay, don't, with fast movements, or he had to be house trained at 1 year old. He wasn't house trained, but it was a process. That's part of adopting. Know ahead of time, this is what you have to do. Don't get mad at the pet. It's not their fault. If they were a rescue or a stray someplace, you don't know what their history was. So be patient and go by the rules of what you should do. And one situation, if you get an adoption and you're not sure about them because you don't know their history, the staff does the best they can to find out what their quirks are. But don't feed them in the same room as your other dog. Give them gradual time, like you put your kitten in a playpen. Give them a gradual time to get to know each other.
Yeah.
Now, when you do adopt a dog or a puppy, the staff always tells you, bring your other dog with you so you can meet them that day. And it's not, you don't do that with cats, but with dogs, it's very important. So the people will bring their dog, they'll take the dog they're thinking about adopting, they'll go for a walk on the property together, and you'll know right then that it's going to be a good blend.
One thing I just wanted to say about the adoption process, and my understanding is because of COVID, there were certain rules and stuff that were put into place. And what was found is that they actually had a much higher percentage of animals of retention in the homes with these new rules. One of them being having an approved application, which is why if you're thinking about adopting, it is important to go online and do the application beforehand, so that when you're ready, it's already taken care of. But also, the whole adoption process is it's like a 30-minute window of time that you might have to go in. So let's say, there was a dog, like Adele said with Teddy, if you went in, now when you have your appointment, you would have half an hour to go for a walk with the dog or sit in the back room with the cat. Mm-hmm. And so you have time to see if your personalities go together, as opposed to just kind of walking in unannounced, or spontaneously just saying one day, I'm going to do this without having one.
I think that was the old days when people would just go into the shelter and say, well, then they still had to wait and go through an application approval. But this way it's done, application's done first. And in my case, but I did bring our other dog, Charlie, to do a meet and greet with Teddy, hit it off right away. But one thing I need to do, because the Ellie and Shallon and Morgan said he was in a room by himself, but don't look over the gate at him, kneel down and look at him head on. And that's so important to do with a dog. Because especially if you don't know what their past history was and you're looking over them, if they were threatened by somebody, that's a threat.
Yes.
But stay away from their face if you don't know the dog. I know Ellie says that to me all the time, because I'll go, oh my God, and she goes, Adele. But
that's important in the adoption process too, because
respect.
Right, if you go in there and you only spend 5 minutes to make a decision, you're not going to have that time to see how the dog reacts. Not every dog is going to be super friendly right away. If you have a dog that's been abused or something,
and
having that time really helps to make sure that the fit is right, and that way the shelter has had a lot less animals end up coming back because of a problem, because things are done in a better, orderly manner that helps to make sure that the adoption is smooth.
Well, think about us. If all of a sudden we were put in a shelter situation, whatever your situation was beforehand, if somebody had passed away, somebody went to a nursing home, somebody is ill, and if they give up, if they surrender their pet, all of a sudden the dog is in this kennel with other dogs barking, and we would be the same way. We would be upset. So if they're barking, it's not because that's the type of dog they are. They don't know what happened. In the new shelter, if we have a dog with anxiety, that's the 5 featured dog rooms that we'll have, that they will be separated, and our volunteers that are dog walkers, just there you go with big hearts, great people. And I can just see in one of these featured bigger kennels where Liz will go in and just spend an hour talking to this dog and making that dog feel more comfortable. So it's something we have looked forward to for a few years, and this year we are so thankful that it's happening. I would say the building's probably going to be done definitely by next summer.
Are you in need of volunteers?
I would say always, and that's another vetting process. You know, when you want to volunteer, it's got to be somebody who does know how to handle dogs or cats. I don't want to sound like it's a strict rule, but
Some experience,
yeah, you need experience.
But there are so many different volunteer opportunities. It can be from helping out at Garlic Fest, selling T-shirts,
Helping out at the store, at our boutique.
to walking dogs, to a lot of times if there is a kitten that they have that needs to be spayed or neutered, I'll take it to the clinic that day. It's just giving the cat a ride to the Walmart parking lot, dropping it off, and then usually they're like, oh no, we'll pick it up after. They're so helpful and kind. They're willing to pick it up. But it could be just driving animals around for them. Then they have more time to be in the shelter, focused on the animals that are there.
That was a big need, because we needed somebody a couple weeks ago with a boxer that was going out of town to Guardian, because we were dealing with a boxer rescue. So Guardian is a hospital down in Westchester, down the line, and it was hard, and I was sick at the time, so I couldn't do it, you couldn't, so that would be a good, if we had a bigger base for that, for the help.
So even
like
if
that.
it's somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with,
You can be
with
a
animals,
transporter.
you can. There's so many different options of things that are needed, especially with the new shelter coming. I'm sure there's going to be even more opportunities for volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So just reach out. There's an application on the shelter's website where you can apply to be a volunteer, and that way they'll have the information and they can contact you and see what's a fit. Like I
Right.
said in the beginning, I was just reading to feral kittens, but now it could be driving a cat here or there, or coming with a dog.
You had no
to talk.
idea what you were
Right,
going to be,
yeah,
or
yeah.
meeting me here tonight to do
Right,
this, that's
exactly.
right,
But
yeah.
it's whatever they need. If
Yeah.
whoever can provide it is more than happy to. So as many volunteers as want to help out, there's plenty of different things to do. And the best thing to do would be to contact the shelter, and you can talk to the staff, and they can let you know what they need. And you
Right,
can
and the
know what-
shelter number again is 845-679-0339. If you're not computer friendly, like my age or above,
The staff is very, you can just
Call.
or leave a message if they're not there, and they'll get back to you, and they can discuss it with you. I think that's part of what makes that magic again, is that they take the time to say, well, over the year and a half, they've kind of learned more about me and the things that I've done in my past life, before career-wise, things that might be able to be applied to do other things.
that you could help us
Right.
with.
So
yeah.
if you want to help out, just call and say, hey, this.
You know,
Give them your resume, kind of. What you
can
do.
you give that number again?
Okay, so it's 845-679-0339, and just leave a message if someone's not there to answer the phone, leave a message and they'll get back to you. And if they feel it's appropriate, they will give me your information and I will call you back.
Is that the all-purpose number?
Yes, it is.
So that if you have some goodie that can be donated to the boutique,
You call that number.
Can you give it again?
845-679-0339.
Okay.
And there's also a bin in front of the shelter. So on days that the landfill is open, when you can, go in, or during the daytime, you can just leave donations in the bin also. Like dog food, blankets, those
Oh,
types
you
of
do
things.
take donations of dog food?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, definitely dog
Yes,
food.
definitely
cat
dog
They,
food.
they have a
Towels, blankets.
They have like an Amazon wish list of things that they need. Sometimes they'll specifically say we have an influx of kittens and we're very low on kitten food, and the community rate, people will send and have things sent there directly
Yeah,
to them.
and on Chewy.com also, we
Yeah,
have a wish list
yeah.
now. And that's the thing too with cats. Used to be in the spring, that would be kitten season. Something happened with COVID, with the cats. It's like, all of a sudden, kittens are being born all year long, even and during the winter. So we've really had our hands filled with kittens, and our vet bills have increased. And with the new shelter, that's another thing you mentioned, if the shelter's not open, but the transfer station is open. When the new shelter opens, we will have our own direct road going back, so the shelter can be open independently of the transfer station. It's all on the same town property, but we will have a separate gate and a road, so it doesn't have to conform.
The new shelter sounds like some mystical, magical place.
That's another
also.
thing. It is. And
It's going to be.
we've been having for several years the capital campaign where we have a naming opportunity. So, and at this time we have a lot of people. You buy. We have a pamphlet. I have this pamphlet here, as a matter of fact. This is the pamphlet. So if you call the shelter, they can give you my number, and we have a pamphlet. And this is a map that has all the rooms. Gosh, I'm not
Oh,
sure
this
if
is
we
the
have
new shelter.
This is the new shelter, and this is the new shelter, and all these rooms are available with our naming opportunity. So, like these are all the featured dog kennels. They have all been purchased. These are all the cat condos here, and we still have quite a few of those that can be purchased. So if you call the animal shelter, they will let me know, and I'll be glad to send one of these pamphlets out, because we still have a lot of areas that need to be purchased.
And also, they have bricks. You can have bricks.
The bricks, yes.
Like a friend of mine, 2 of her cats passed away in the same month. So some friends of us got together, and so we're having her cats' names
Put on the
a
bricks.
brick.
Oh,
that
Right,
will go-
and
that
in
will
this,
go-
in this folder has for the bricks.
So they're all money, fundraising
Fundraising.
ideas where you can be a part of the new
And it's a
shelter.
big part of how we have raised money for the new shelter, and that's ongoing, because we still have to sell quite a few. Here's the brick form is in here, small brick, the 4x8, and the large brick is 8x8.
Well, now, where can you get this?
Just call the shelter again at 845-679-0339. They will, you just tell them that you want one. They will either refer that person to my number, or they'll give me the information to send this out to the person.
Okay, so you can do, this is ongoing.
This is ongoing.
And then the Blue Jean Ball is a springtime event every May.
ongoing. It was fantastic last year.
Well,
And-
but then it's gonna be every year.
Every year, and Bob Siracusano from owning Sawyer Motors,
Yes?
he's our auctioneer. We have a live auctioneer that night. who will
So
put this on
people
our
can
site.
donate things that he's going to auction
So
off.
businesses donate, and we had,
What types of things are you looking for?
Right now, one of the members of the board is going to different businesses. There are from gift certificates to, I remember, there are sometimes that there are like wine,
there was
like a wheelbarrow of
there was a
wine,
wheelbarrow filled with wine. There's going to be
restaurant.
4 nights in Paris.
Yep. I mean, just a
Donated.
whole, there's a silent auction and a live auction both. So businesses all over the area are donating things, and we've got other bigger things.
Yeah, the silent auction is usually the smaller items, but smaller, I can mean like a couple $100. The live auction, it's just fun to be there and watch it happen. If you ever saw Bob Siracusano in action, he gets people just in such a good mood, and everybody is very gracious.
So people have, oh my goodness, we're down to 1 minute.
Okay.
Oh no,
And,
listen,
and one quick last thing, we're starting a newsletter also. That's in the process now. Soon that will be going out monthly. That will give people the information.
so how do you subscribe to the
It'll
newsletter?
be on the website soon. There'll be a place to go in if you're not already a subscribed
And that's an
person.
expertise that you brought
Right.
to us.
So in the meantime, what number do we call?
845-679-0339.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
this
Thank you for
evening.
It was our
And
pleasure.
Thank you so much, Ellen.
Thank you.
We
Thank you,
appreciate it so much.
Out on this cold night.
We love you. Thank you so much, Ellen.